All right, it is time for the John Riggins Show. It is Friday, January 29th. The month of January is just flown by, Riggo, and we got a little more Super Bowl preview for the big game coming up next week. And we are going to drill down and get into what happened 38 years ago, the culmination of the Washington Redskins playoff run 38 years ago when you played the Miami Dolphins in the Super Bowl, Pasadena, California. We're going to get the big guy's take on that. So here's Riggo.
All righty, Todd. Thank you. A couple things. One, I get this interview request yesterday. I've got to ask you just exactly because you're in the biz. It came in probably around 7 o'clock last night. And if I'm not mistaken, I had the opportunity to tape it at 12:30 to 1 o'clock.
In the nighttime
a.m.
in the nighttime
hours.
Yeah,
to 100, 12. We went, and then I could have went on live from any time from 3:20 to 5:20.
You are a night owl.
No, I think they wanted to interview Lisa Marie because I wouldn't have been up at those hours. But I'm thinking, what were they thinking? I mean, the only thing that comes across, it's almost insulting to get, an invitation for an interview and get it that late. And then on top of it, the hours that they expect you to be available. It's just, and it makes me think, oh, he's desperate. Let's throw him a bone. He'll do anything. He there ain't a microphone he won't get in front of. I don't know. I'm going, are you kidding? I mean, this must be, now I'm fine, and it very could well be possible that it's just a big joke. I don't know.
Oh, it's not. It's not.
Oh, it is? Really?
It's not. It is extremely.
Yeah, because I handed it over to you.
You did. When you texted me, I had to read it like 3 times to make sure I was reading it correctly.
Exactly.
And that maybe you hadn't juxtaposed some of the AM, PM, or the time slots.
No, I copied it and sent everything that I'd gotten exactly to you.
And as I was going to reply on your behalf and tell them to politely go pound sand, you didn't give me the contact information.
Well, guess what? I went back and tried to get it after you sent me that. Of course, that wasn't until this morning. I'd missed my big opportunity. But I thought, well, let's just see if I could have. The best I could get was, because it was a text message, and I'm sure there's a way I could find. But for me, who is not Mr. Computer Guy, I could only get about 6 digits because then it gets ... So I don't know where it came from. I guess the trick was for me to personally get back to them, and that way, and then they could have told me what number to call.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to book it tonight so we can get you on tonight for the weekend hours.
Well, and I got to go to sleep right now. We're not going to be able to do the show today because I need to get my sleep. I didn't get my sleep last night. We were watching this show, and when I say last night, I got to get up at 7 with my daughter, get her off to school. But I didn't get to bed till like 12:15 or something like that. That's not enough sleep for me. I'm sure at some point today.
I actually went to bed early last night, which is why I didn't get back to.
Would be what, before 11?
Yes.
No kidding.
Yes, I was a good boy last night.
That's stunning.
Yeah, I know.
I can't believe that.
Feeling pretty good.
Well, see, I know I'm going to crash. I'm doing all right now, but there is going to be a crash later this afternoon. I've gotten into that habit where, and I've got, I'm old enough now. I give myself permission to take a nap.
Naps
in the middle of the day.
are good.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with
Naps
it. I'm sitting at the table, and of course the saliva's running down my chin. And I think I better go take a nap.
Well,
no, it's not quite that bad, but I do. I go and take a nap. And so, like I said, I think that's probably what I'll have today. I got to ask you a couple questions as it relates to the Super Bowl. Because I was asking my wife, and she didn't, and I don't know why I asked her. I thought maybe she'd heard something. Because then we get to going, like both of us, start a little bit of an argument over whether this is going to happen and not happen. And neither one of us know what we're talking about. Is there going to be a Radio Row at this Super Bowl?
No.
That's done.
All of it's done. There's no parties. There's no conventions.
Wow.
There's no media day.
Wow.
There's no nothing. Now, they are doing some of this stuff, like the press conferences and all that is all going to be virtual. It's all going to be basically
So
Zoom.
they'll have the players and they'll have them in places so that reporters around the world can ask them questions type of stuff, you think?
John, the Kansas City's not even allowed to travel to Tampa.
When do they arrive?
The earliest is 48 hours in advance of the game. They're talking about going one day in advance.
Just like they would for a regular road game.
Right. Right.
I can see that. You know, it's a weird way. For us, it's such a shock. But I'm looking at, and they're going to have a few people in the stands. A few. How many did you say?
22.5.
Okay, well, that will be a crowd. But then again, it's going to be a nonpartisan crowd for the most part.
Right.
Unless they're only inviting fans from Kansas City and the local Tampa people. I mean, I don't know. My point is somebody going to feel like there's a home field advantage? You know, in the Super Bowl, it doesn't really go that way. It's almost 50-50.
And as big as the stadium is and the way that these folks are going to be separated, I mean, think about it, 22.5.
Yeah, and that place probably holds 80.
Everybody can have their own section.
Yeah, basically
for
that's
social
true.
distancing.
So what I'm thinking to myself is, right away, I go, you know, is this going to be kind of? They won't ever allow this to continue if they don't have to. The league wouldn't, because obviously there's all kinds of money to be made with Radio Row and, you know, all the promotion and all this stuff. I would guess.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, think about it. What really the Super Bowl week as we know it, and from for all the ones we've been together. And last time we were down in Tampa. And all the things that people are doing business, the business that is done during that week leading up is some of the biggest business in this country. And with all the parties and the cocktails and everything that flows through that. So this is in the billions of dollars that are being lost.
Let's be straight about this. It's a corporate event.
No question.
Yeah, it's a corporate event.
It's not for the fans like everybody
or
wants
the
to believe it
players,
is.
and that's where I'm going with this, is that I'm thinking to myself, I mean, on the one hand, I thought about, because you go to your first Super Bowl, it's almost like going to going to Disneyland for the first time. And the first one we went to, it was in Pasadena, which we're going to talk about in a second. Well, we're talking about it, where you just you didn't know what to expect. And I'm thinking back then, though, there wasn't, because it was happened so quickly, and they had to scramble, so there wasn't anything really set up. And actually, the second one was completely different than these latter-day Super Bowls with the Radio Row. Hell, I don't even know if they had a Radio Row back in those days. Exactly.
There was no need.
So now you've got basically a circus begins on Monday when the teams arrive, all the the media arrives and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, from a player standpoint, I'll bet you that like the Chiefs and even and the Bucks, this is the first time this has ever happened, unprecedented. They're playing in their home stadium in the Super Bowl, so they're going to go through a week like a normal week. Mm-hmm. Kansas City's going to go through it like a normal week to go play a road game.
Right.
And I'm looking at it, and as I was saying, I'm thinking to myself, oh, yeah, you're going to miss out. And I'm going, yeah, but wait a second, dumbass. As a player, you're loving it. You're loving what's happened. The fans are the ones, like you
can
said,
really focus on the taking care of, and you got 2 weeks to do it.
And then and here's the other part of it. And I'm telling you, from a player standpoint, we may see, and I don't know, it's hard to say, because once you get out there and play, the adrenaline kicks in and it just goes to where it goes. But I'm thinking, you based on what we're talking about and how this is all coming together, you should see one of the better Super Bowls you've seen in a long time. Because the players, like you said, they'll be focused. There won't be any outside distractions. I'm telling you, that Super Bowl 18, the outside distractions were off the charts with what was going on down there. I mean, it was really a pain in the ass to be in Tampa that week. Tampa was like a cow town.
You couldn't wait to play the game and escape all the bullshit.
Exactly. And I got anything against Holiday Inns, but that's where the league stuck the team, is in the Holiday Inn, which wasn't ready at all for a Super. Tampa wasn't ready for a Super Bowl back then. And the league back then, Mr. Cook had done something and had upset somebody within the league.
He said,
Might have been
Holiday Inn?
Yes, it's exactly what happened. Like, okay, Mr. Cook, you want to play it that way? Fine.
Wow.
Yes. Oh, your hotel. Yeah, it's the Holiday Inn, just almost next to the airport. You'll be fine. You'll like it. You'll love it.
Little known tidbit.
There was a little, oh, he was giving him the business.
Oh.
I think that's what it was. Yeah. But my point is from a player's standpoint, they ought to be. I can't see where they can't go. This is great. Andy Reid's got to be loving it. As a coach, everybody's going to be at home at night. They're not going to be tempted to wander around and solicit a prostitute, or in other words, all the possibilities, or go on a binge and take off and go to Tijuana, or in this case Cuba, maybe head to Havana and just
That's true. Never thought about that.
What was the offensive center for the Raiders that pulled that one off? I mean, people go nuts at this thing. I think we're going to see one of the better Super Bowls, actually.
One of the best, and I forget the gentleman's name, but Saturday night he was named the NFL Community Guy of the Year award. And
You talking about Robinson?
He got busted with the prostitute.
Yeah, Miami. I was down there. I mean, I wasn't down. I was down there, and I'd left that morning, I think, before the game. But then all of a sudden, on my way home, I'm finding out. I think his name was Eugene Robinson.
Eugene Robinson, good community guy.
He was up for the. You'll love this. He was up for the Walter Payton Man of the Year. It was like
Can't make it up.
Can't make
Man
this
of the
stuff.
people.
Yes,
He
very
was
much
just
so.
helping the local economy.
Basically, you could say that. Yeah.
So some of the tidbits for what's going on, because we got another week before Super Bowl 55, and the other notion, John, of guys that are dinged up. 2 weeks to get your body right, and I mean, what an advantage that is versus what you guys went through.
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, I'm looking back on it, I'm going, I guess you kind of like it. In some ways, though, the apprehension that takes place, it's just like more practice. You got another, you got to go 2 weeks of practice, although they give you a few days off. But you got to get out there. It's like, I don't know. For me,
I'm really talking about guys that are injured, that are going to come back and play.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Because Tampa had a couple of key players on the defensive side that did not play in the championship that are now healthy enough to go, because it's all hands on deck one time.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, one of the other things we talked about leading up to, I like all the stories and the tidbits behind it. Commercials have become legendary. Companies have been made. Companies have been destroyed by ads that have run on the Super Bowl. So CBS, which is broadcasting this year's game with Romo and Nance. Mm-hmm. So the game is sold out with commercial inventory, and they sold out
and this is amazing. I didn't mean to interrupt you,
Sure.
but that does not include Coke, Pepsi, or Budweiser. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I mean, that's incredible.
Now,
they must have people standing in line to buy advertising.
well, they do, and so Budweiser and Coke are sitting this year out. Pepsi will not have in-game ads, but Pepsi is the big sponsor of the halftime show, and Pepsi has been for years.
Okay, so they kept that.
So that's the only thing they did keep. Then some of the first-time advertisers are Huggies, Chipotle, and DoorDash. They
Huggies?
are first-time advertisers.
Interesting.
Yes. So this year's 30-second spot. Want to take a guess?
30-second spot.
A 30-second spot. What the
what's
price
it cost?
tag is for
I thought you tipped your hand. The last show we did was like what, $5 million or something?
5.6, actually $5.5 million.
For a 30-second spot.
Yeah, last year was 5.6 million, so you're getting a little bit of a discount this year. You're getting a 100G discount. So it's 5.5. They are sold out, and they are saying, which they do this every year, as we see how early the pregame, then the pre-pregame, then the pre-pre-pregame, and they start at about 11 a.m.
And this game, the kickoff is what, 6 something?
Yeah, it'll be around 6:30.
Right. So you got, what is it, about 6 hours of programming before the actual game begins? At least? Yeah, maybe 7. It just keeps getting added to every year.
So if you still
once again, I apologize for interrupting, but I was wondering, do you have any idea what an ad sold for 25 years ago?
I got the ad. What do you think the ad cost in your game?
Oh, I'm gonna say half $500,000.
$400,000 for a 30.
I'm in the ballpark again.
You are. $400 for a 30-second
And now
spot
it's 5.
in 1983, 38 years ago. Wow. So for you math
That's
majors out there, somebody give us a percentage of what it's morphed into. 5.5 million versus 400,000, 38 years.
I'm wondering, I'm wondering how many breaks they take too. How many commercial breaks they had back then? How many they have now? Have they added commercial breaks?
Oh yes, they've added inventory dramatically. Then they also have what are called floater positions, where here's some of the wild cards that you don't know about within the context of a game. And TV controls the timeouts, right? Aside from a team using their timeouts strategically or whatever else, but for the networks to actually go to commercial breaks, that's done by the big wigs in the trucks. So let's say you've got.
But usually it's during a dead ball period, so they don't call a timeout with a run. They just ran the ball and the official.
And they're trying to do a better job of that for relative to the pace of play. You probably noticed this year that. You used to be able to say, okay, after every kickoff of a score, they're going to go to a timeout.
Right. Exactly.
So they have changed that somewhat. Earlier in the games, you will notice they will stick around because they know people are getting conditioned, and it's too much of the action when the game is just getting started, or say the second half is just ramping back up. So they're delaying the commercials a little bit later.
And what's the purpose for that?
so that people don't tune out because of the frequency commercials early in the broadcast, early in the action. They
When you
want
say
you to
tune out, I mean, in other words, go
let's
make
say,
a sandwich or something?
Yeah, exactly. Go and potentially change the channel. But let's say you're starting the game. They want the game to get going and start getting the emotion in the battle, and you're invested in it.
You know, it's like when you ever watched movies and where they in the beginning they got like long stretches,
Sure.
and they draw, and then when it gets getting closer to the denouement, they start cutting a commercial every 30 seconds almost.
Exactly.
It's the same principle
because they hooked you in.
Exactly.
They got to hook you in. Now he's invested in it.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
they've done a better job of that. But where they have and where they sell, and they actually do sell this. Let's say there's an extraordinary amount of injuries, and they have to stop because the cart's coming out or this guy's dinged up.
Right,
so those are the wild cards. So they'll have a separate bank of commercial spots over there, and saying, okay, go to the first guy because this is extra inventory. Boom, here's another 5.5 million.
They're in
yes.
queue.
And some of them they're sold as it might air, it might not. Maybe you're 10th in line in these floater positions because there wasn't enough break in the action or it was a fast-paced game or however that works.
Do you still pay?
No.
Okay.
No.
You don't get if you're a commercial doesn't air.
No.
It doesn't cost you anything to stand in line.
No. But, this is the biggest money and the biggest day. It'll be the #1 rated event. It always is. And that's the power of the Super Bowl. And we've got one more week. And, sadly, we're going to get some snow. Unless the weathermen are completely...
It's changing though.
Really? I don't know. I heard it 3 to 5 for this Sunday with some more coming on Monday.
Well, yeah, it's almost once it starts, it's going to be unusual because normally around here anyway, you get a snow, and it never lasts more than 24 hours. Usually, it'll peter out. Now, several years back, and it was over a Super Bowl weekend, we got that hellacious snow.
You were listening in your truck, weren't you?
I had to go out in my truck.
Then you lost
power
electricity.
Lost power. And I had to go out in the truck. And then I see the power come on, so I go back in the house, turn it on. I get about 2 minutes of the game, power goes back out. And it'll come on for about another 48, 72
you little
hours.
hot toddy, you were good in your truck. I remember you go text me.
You'll get a kick out of this because there was all this snow, and I'd taken my girls down to their grandmother's house along with my wife. And so I remember the next morning I go out where the truck was, and there was about 6 beer bottles outside. Outside the driver's door. So I had a good Super Bowl.
You had to stay warm.
It was interesting. Yeah, it was. But, so the snow here, like 2 days ago I looked at it, and they was talking about heavy snow at times. Now they're going wintry mix, which when you get that thrown into it, you never know what we're going to... I think the weather's going to be nasty is what I think it's going to be. And I'm not really... There's part of me that likes to see a snow. And there's some part of me, there's something romantic about snow.
No question.
It's so quiet. And I live right, on the canal there where, you got all this timber where I'll go down and go hike in the timber in the snow. And that'll be fun. But then I got to go think about scooping snow. And I'm going, that part. And then you get to the slushy part. I'm getting to the point now where the snow, I mean, it's only a few hours of enjoyment. And then it's like a lot more pain after that. So I just assume see it just go on.
I bring it up because I think that'd be cool to have snow on Super Bowl Sunday, where everybody we're kind of
trapped at home.
The pandemic, we're kind of trapped anyways.
Yeah.
So let's just go all in.
No, that's a good thought. There's nothing. I tell you what, and for me, to get a big fire roaring with the snow coming down outside. I mean, but I can't. The cocktails, I can't really just really unwind, and so it's like it's going to be very frustrating. Who knows? I might have to break bad myself.
There you go. All right, let's go back in time. 38 years ago.
Yep.
January 30th, 1983, Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. And the one thing, having produced some games out there, for those that have never been out there, is what a spectacular just experience the Rose Bowl is, and with the mountains in the background and 103,000. I mean, was that the largest crowd you ever played? I mean, it was 103,667.
No, I just realized once upon a time in high school in Centralia, we played like
106.
There ain't 100,000 people in the county. Actually, probably the Tri-County area. I don't know how far you'd have. You had to go all the way to Peak, and you still might not get. Yeah, no, that was by far the biggest audience I ever played.
Could you tell coming out on the field and warm up relative to?
Yeah, not real. Well, when you came up for warm-ups, everybody wasn't in their seats yet,
Right.
and so you couldn't really get a real appreciation for just how big the Rose Bowl is. But you got to remember that is an antiquated stadium. The locker rooms were not much, if you recall, if you were out there. No, you weren't. You were too young.
I was out there 8 years later.
Okay,
working.
so it's probably about the same.
Oh, it was.
It hadn't improved.
Oh, the press box. I mean, it's
old.
it's a fire trap for one.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. But you know what I thought you were going to say when you said California. Personally, I don't. Well, I've been to several Super Bowls, not playing in them, of course. But really, from that perspective, if I were a fan and going to the game, there's not a better place than Los Angeles for a Super Bowl. Period. End of story. Don't even need to look any further. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's my feeling. I mean, I've been to New Orleans, and New Orleans. There's a lot of great cities around here, but let's face it. There's something Los Angeles is sexier. You're going to have the weather. It's going to be right.
You're gonna have the
you got
stars.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's a huge media center and all that stuff. And it's so vast you can get lost. I mean, hell, if you really wanted to, not from a fan standpoint now, you got Napa Valley. I mean, it's just a stone's throw away. I mean, good God. And if you really want to go international, Tijuana's 100 miles south of you. I mean, you got all kinds of possibilities. Go down there and watch go down and watch the shows or whatever they are. That they have in Tijuana, and go down and buy some good leather goods. I don't know.
So leading up to the game. So you guys, where did you stay in L.A.?
We stayed at the South Coast Plaza, is what it was, and I ended up staying there about 5 years ago. A friend of mine knew some people in I want to say the Hyatt chain, but I don't know which one it was. I'm just saying that it could have been Hilton. Who knows? It wasn't Holiday Inn though. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I stayed there, and it was like...
Were you in the Riggins suite? Did they give you the Riggo suite?
I don't even remember where it was, but it was so weird. I couldn't quite piece together, but you got to remember, that would have been over 30 years ago, so stuff had changed. But it's right there in the town is Costa Mesa.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that's right. At least that's where the hotel is. John Wayne Airport, Newport Beach, the whole deal. It's right in that area. But it was, it was like, wow. I mean, I can't. I tell people I go out and do, get on the speaking tour, and one of the things I end up talking about Super Bowl 17 towards the end of my speech, and that was like I have to back up a little bit here to go into the whole deal about when I first was drafted. As a number 6 overall pick in the 1971 NFL draft by the New York Jets, and so I was in my 11th year of football, I think, something like that, and. All the way through that, with the Jets 5 years, never even got a whiff of the playoffs. First year down here in 76, made the playoffs, but the team was moribund. I mean, basically, it was sputtering and
coughing, running out of fuel.
Yeah, flat tires, the whole deal. As it pulled into Bloomington, Minnesota to play the Vikings, who eventually would go on and play in the Super Bowl and be defeated. And we, got the hell beat out of us up, and it was the weirdest thing up there that day. It was, the first playoff round that we were a wild card. We had to be a wild card. We wouldn't have won our division. We were 10-6. It was probably 75 degrees in late December it was one of those weird deals you would never believe.
In
Minneapolis,
wow.
Go figure. But anyway, I'd never had a whiff of anything like this, and that's why the 79 game down in Dallas, when everything looked like it was lined up to get the home field advantage, and then you lose, it was like, I kind of thought, because my only thing being a first round pick, number 6 overall, I didn't have any sense of entitlement, but I just had this one kind of little, what I would say would be a pretty modest goal, if you will. That was to play in the Super Bowl. That's all I wanted to do, just to play in the Super Bowl. Yeah, that was good enough. I was fine with that. And so here we end up, and we make it to the Super Bowl. So, beating Dallas was kind of like, to get to the Super Bowl is like, I'm good.
Yeah, right.
Right now, hit me with the lightning. I'm ready to go.
House money.
Yes, exactly. And so we get out there, and it was California. I mean, it was like Super Monday, Super Tuesday, Super Wednesday leading up. It's like I tell people, it was really kind of like, like the kids the night before Christmas, while visions of sugar plums
Sure.
dance. That's what was in my head every night. You know, it's like I say, it was the golden light. We were bathing in it. It was like the purple air that people breathe or whatever. I mean, my mom and dad, you know, they came out, and my brothers were out there. And that's where we, you know, there are moments where we went out to dinner, you know, and with them, I had, you know, to be able to share dinner, which was, you know, was out of the ordinary. And it was the week, like I said, there wasn't 2 weeks in here. There was just the Super Bowl week. And then Mr. Cook, he had the party on a Wednesday night, and you know all the dignitaries were there, and it was.
Is that when you had the
tuxedo,
the black tie?
I'm at practice that day, and I'm thinking to myself, and Ron Saul, who was on the team, his brother Rich played for the Rams, so he lived out there. And I said, Ron, any way you get a hold of your brother, and I need a tuxedo with a top hat and the whole deal,
tails,
the white tie, the tails, and all that. And so they arranged. They had it dropped off over at the hotel. And so, you know, I'm going to this party. I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to do this right. And it was. Everybody, it was almost like I was Santa Claus. And everyone wanted to sit on my lap and have their picture taken. I swear to God, I must have taken 200 photos that night. The worst part is when Washington, Nate Fine was the photographer,
yes.
The late Nate Fine. He was their photographer for 30, 40 years. I can't remember how long. He actually took all these photos. I never really ever got to see them because then somehow they got destroyed or something. They got lost.
Man.
Yeah, something weird about that. But yeah, I swear to God, it was one. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It was all leading up to it. Like you said, the house is money. I don't think that anybody. I mean, for me, I can't talk about all my other teammates. But it was just like I was just happy to be there, and I was there to have fun, and I did. And
stress-free.
Yes, I wasn't going, oh God, we got the Dolphins and they got the no-name defense.
Number one defense.
The killer bees. I mean, did you see what they did to the Jets the week? I didn't do any of that. It's like, yeah, the Miami Dolphins. Because I got to remember this too. When I was with the Jets, I had to play them twice a year. You know, and so I was used to getting my butt kicked by the Miami Dolphins. It was like
Arnsparger.
Yeah, so like this is not me nothing new. I've been here before. So yeah, it was an unbelievable weekend. And then you know you go in there and you play the game, and you end up becoming the MVP. And it was like, whoa, I didn't see this coming.
Well, before we get there, I got to imagine. I mean, and how the Super Bowl has morphed over the years, and now how it's internationally known, right, with the press and media.
Yeah.
And I got to imagine, like your team hotel, that had to be a circus, right? I mean, they probably didn't have enough security.
Not anything like the next year, because then that's where I've always felt like at that time Tampa wasn't really, compared to Los Angeles, it wasn't even close to being ready for it. The South Coast Plaza was a hotel. It was big enough, but when like you said, there wasn't. You know, everybody had to travel. There wasn't the media circus that you see today.
Did you have to do a media day?
No, I don't recall that.
No, I know you did. I know you did it. I know you did it the following year against the Raiders.
You did.
Because Lyle Alzado had talked big trash, and then
wait a minute, I take that back. There was that media element to it and I remember, but it wasn't anything like it is now.
Right.
And it was unusual because I hadn't talked to the press all year because you know they'd stuffed me in a trash can the year before. Mm-hmm. So I said, hey, guess what? This is for you guys. I got nothing, absolutely nothing. So I did and it was unusual because I was I think I might have been the prototype to start where players start getting interviewed, like because I remember
in a group situation. Where it's like announced as...
Gibbs was doing it, and I can't remember if he went before I went or if I went, because he was there, maybe he was coming in behind me. Mm-hmm. And I think I think that's what it was. But yeah, I did end up doing but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't Media Row, but it was a lot of the, you know, I don't know how many journalists were in there. I mean, and reporters, 50, 100, I have no idea, but it was a lot. And like you said, nowadays, and this is the other thing you mentioned, international. That game was the first game ever shown in the UK.
It was.
And it's weird. I picked up a lot of fans in the UK.
You have a tremendous amount. I get emails and tweets from the UK all the time relative to that was the first time, like you say, that it was
and I can't believe it.
There.
And they watched it because, you know, their game is soccer and cricket for the most part that I'm aware of. And yet there's a few. And you know what? Football started to catch on in the UK. They started to actually they had the Budweiser League over there.
Right.
So there was some, you know, and I went over there to look at one of the franchises. I was thinking about getting involved in it, but they didn't want me involved in it. But that's because they got a load of me. Like I spent all my time in the Budweiser truck. They're going, no.
All right, I'm going to throw out some tidbits here,
Okay,
see how
hit
much
me.
you remember.
Hit me.
And some of it may be, do you remember who was the in charge of the coin toss? Who was the celebrity? Who?
Oh, I'm going to say Bronco Nagurski.
You were close.
Red Grange.
You were close. You're in the genre.
And it's hard to believe that those guys would be, it'd be like, of course, they were a little bit older, but if you think back in that's 1980 instead of 1970, I'm those guys nowadays. Who was it?
Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch.
Oh, okay. So he's not, yeah, and it was in L.A. He's not quite, those guys were way back when. I think Bronco Nagurski, I'm pretty sure. He did a coin toss, I'm pretty sure, at one of these Super Bowls.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying now, and it's hard for me to comprehend, is that if I were to go out and be the guy that flipped the coin, I think Joe Namath did it a couple years ago, didn't he?
Yep.
Or he gave the trophy away, I can't remember, but I'd be Bronco Nagurski. I mean, these players be going, who's this relic?
It is 38. It is 38 years ago.
Where's this
We've
dinosaur
all gotten
come
a
from?
little older.
Yeah, well, peel that back, you'd be talking about what, somewhere in the 40s, wouldn't you?
With Crazy Legs, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
no, he played in the 50s, I think. I remember the movie.
Yeah.
The story of Crazy Legs Hirsch.
So a couple other tidbits. The national anthem was sung by one Leslie Easterbrook, the Leslie Easterbrook.
And that is who?
I have no idea.
Thank you.
But she probably did a tremendous job. Her little tidbit was that her limousine driver did not know where the Rose Bowl was. She got stuck in traffic and made it literally like 90 seconds before she had to perform.
Whoa.
And she said, and what had happened, do you remember that there was a moment of silence because the legendary Alabama football coach, Paul Bear Bryant, had died on January 26th. There were three Dolphins, the great Dwight Stevenson, Bob Baumhauer, and the infamous Don McNeil that were all All-Americans for Bryant at Alabama. And Redskins reserve running back Wilbur Jackson was the first African-American to earn a football scholarship to Alabama.
Huh.
And so they're also saying, Leslie's saying, that's really the only reason I made it to sing the anthem because they had that additional time for the moment of silence. And she came sliding in and...
See, I don't remember that, and normally you're out there on the field for the national anthem, but I don't recall the national anthem that day. So
how about the coin toss? This actually, I remember this now. The coin toss with Jerry Markbright was your referee. Jerry the legendary, and I remember this was controversial because Bob Kuchenberg,
was the captain.
He was the captain. He called tails, and the coin came down tails, but Markbright got confused because the coin looks so similar, heads or tails. And if you go back and look at the film of this, I remember it being it was like, wait a second, no, that's not. And so he had screwed up, but then he corrected his mistake with his guys because he misread the coin.
So who won the toss?
The Dolphins had won the toss,
and they received.
Yeah. Okay, so after referee Jerry Markbright. And I hope people can find that because it's a great clip. And actually, that was part of the reason why they also started making sure that the coin
was obvious.
And I think they have it maybe with each team on one side, or I don't know, whatever the mechanism is. But that was controversial for back in the day.
Sure, it would have been. But I'm wondering too, why not just use a regular coin? But back then, I guess that you could sell the commemorative coin. Okay.
Get your red hot while they last. All right, now the game was broadcast on NBC, and the announcers are Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen.
Yep.
On radio, Jack Buck and Hank Stram.
Yeah, I was going to guess.
Legendary crew. Legendary crew.
So Hank by then was no longer coaching.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, he would have retired, because he went.
Yeah.
He Kansas City was where he was, and then he tried New Orleans for a while, and then I think he ended up in the broadcast booth.
That is correct. Okay, so anchoring for the pregame, halftime, and postgame coverage for NBC, Mike Adamle, former teammate, right?
That's right. It was. Now you bring it up.
Mike
I remember him
Adamle.
in the locker room after the game.
Yes. Ahmad Rashad and Pete Axtell.
I remember him vaguely. If he's still around.
He is not, but
Rashad and Mike Adamle are.
Indeed. So those were the broadcasters for the game, and what was your mindset going through all the pregame mishmash and everything that's got it going. How are you feeling?
It was a beautiful day, and that's all I could think of. Like, well, this is really cool. This is what I always wanted to do. And that was about it, We'd been, remember at the very beginning of the run, before the Detroit game, I went to Joe Bugle and told him to give me the ball. He said, well, go and see the old man. So I told, Gibbs to give me the ball. And, and had no idea what, Gibbs thought of my request. I was pretty much, the church mouse when it came to that kind of stuff. I don't, you ever see the cartoons where they say, okay, I need a volunteer. Yeah. And the old cartoon, and like everybody in the line takes one step back and there's one guy that doesn't and he's standing there. So the guy goes, okay, you. Well, it wasn't quite like that. I was always a part of that other guys that I took one step back. But this, like I said, I kind of thought I wanted to play in the Super Bowl. And I don't know, something about this, I just kind of, I can't put it into words, who knows, but thought, you know what, step forward and go out there and tell them, not that you'd have any influence on anything. They could have just said, well, hey, and that's kind of the way the meeting, when I talked to Joe, I wasn't in there more than a minute, maybe 2 minutes at the most, because he just said, hey, thanks, John, that's good to know, okay? And because I'd never done it before, and I'd always told Bugle and figured Bugle would go tell him, just kind of joking and just kind of feeling good. Because when I went in the locker room, I'd been thinking about this on the drive out to the park that day to get treatment, and literally, the hair was standing up on the back of my neck. Literally, I was getting goosebumps going out there, thinking of this great event that was getting ready to happen that I was finally going to be a part of.
You literally trained all your life for.
Well, yeah, you could say that. And so I'm like literally. I could have played right then. I was ready to go. And so when I see Bugle, I was, in all honesty, it's in acting they call it emotional preparation, that I'd been thinking about it so much. I was literally, the adrenaline and everything was going that, I didn't even need to warm up. And it was all psychological. And that's so when Bugle told me to go and tell Gibbs, I kind of was Paul-axed there for a second. I went, well, this ain't the way our little routine works.
You always kind of underwhelmed?
Bugle almost acted like he was angry because he looked at me and he just kind of scowled and he went, don't tell me, go and tell the old man. If I'd have told him that 3 weeks prior when we were playing a regular season game, he'd go, right, really, Riggo? Really? You're feeling it? That's what Bugles would have done. This time, and it took me about until 2 years ago, I figured it out. Bugle figured that because he was thinking the same thing. He's thinking we're going to run the football, and that's what and I think he's the guy that turned Joe Gibbs' career around. To be honest with you, when he was 0-5, Bugle said, "You got to run the ball, son. That's the way you're going to make it in this league, and you got the horse to do it here." Mm-hmm. Okay, so when Bugle knew that Gibbs hearing it from me directly probably would have more meaning.
Sure.
And then him coming in and being, as he always used to be, was was the intermediator. He was, took the message. So and Joe was just so nonchalant. I mean, I went in the coach's locker room. He was the only one in there, and I'd never been in there before, believe it or not, and played 5, 6, 7 years here, and 5 years at the time, something like that. And he just kind of smiled and said, "Oh, okay, John, that's good to know." And I went out and I went, "Well, okay." It's like, well, at least I said so. I mean, I figured because I was still buzzing, right? Like I told you, I was high, and it was so deflating. It was like, okay,
why aren't they?
But he wasn't
serious?
Where I was. If I'd have gave him a half pint and Joe, which he never drinks, of course, and he'd have knocked a couple of chugs back, he went, "Really? Okay, I like what I'm hearing. I like. Okay, keep that thought. I like it. But it had never happened. But then obviously the playoffs, we played 3 games, and I think I averaged, 34 carries or something like that, 34, 35 carries. And so, you get into this game, and, the game was, going into it, you kind of knew what it was, but it was like I said, it was a sunny day. I remember warming up, looking up in the stands, and your parents are there, and you can't explain it.
Yeah.
And didn't really know how the game was going to turn. You didn't think in the beginning it's like, they score, then we kick a field goal, we kick out to them, Fulton Walker, he runs it back for a touchdown.
98 yards.
Going, yeah. I don't know, killer bees. But we were just, it wasn't anything big. We were just hammering away at him, getting here and there. And the defense, Dexter had, one of the big games. Then he did all kinds of stuff. The defense in general, everybody, the Dolphins could score. So much so, I think, didn't they put Strock in the second half?
They did. So much so that Washington defense, this is incredible, they limited Miami to 176 yards, 34 yards in the second half, which is why your run for the game was close. It really, score-wise, it was close, but you felt the momentum, and that's where your run was the backbreaker because the game was not over.
No. There was probably about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, but it felt like it was over because the defense was just lights out.
Well, after the run, exactly, because it didn't seem like Miami was going to be able to put it in. And, they'd already went to the second-team their backup quarterback, which kind of tells you everything you need to know. But I've always thought about this, too, and that's what I tell people, is that, here Gibbs was in his second year as a head coach, right? And he's playing in the Super Bowl, biggest game of his life at that point. And he decides to go for it. You're on the 43, and obviously it was a pretty easy decision because he knew if we get stuffed, the defense, they're not going to score. We'll get the ball back. We're going to have to start over. We're going to have to start. And you got to give credit to the Miami defense. They had a good defense. Like you said, it was the number one rated defense in the league that year. That defense was good. And like I said, they'd always been good. I'd played against them when I was at the Jets. That was the first time I'd ever gained 100 yards on the Miami Dolphins.
Wow.
And I played them 10 times before that when I was at the Jets. I'm pretty sure that's right. I'd gotten close a couple times, but never went over 100 yards. And so when they call that when they called the timeout, and I saw Bill Arnsberger before he passed away years ago, and he told me, he says, "You know who called that timeout?" He goes, "It was me. I'm the genius that called that timeout." And I don't know what he meant by it because I'm going, "Well, Bill," I'm thinking, "Bill, you knew, everybody knew that was watching who's getting the football. The only thing you didn't know
was Didier always in, or was that a
Donnie Warren had broken a bone in his ankle.
Okay,
so Dids had to come in to replace Donnie. So, and I think that's right. I mean, in other words, I'm a little confused on that. But I remember this is another interesting part of that whole deal is I remember, and I didn't know this until we were doing that outdoor show, and I was hunting with Russ and Clint all out in Washington State, and we were all getting together, and we got to talking about that, the run and the timeout and all this stuff, and what happened was Didier comes into the game. This part I do remember. And the announcer didn't really know exactly how to pronounce his name. He thought he was French.
Didier.
Exactly. He says, "Now coming to game number 86, Clint Didier." And I'm kind of laughing to myself. And Dids, he's like, he's looking around and all that.
He's arrived, huh?
And Grimy goes, "God damn it, Didier, get your goddamn head in this goddamn huddle." It's like Grimy was all business, and Dids is in there soaking it up. Just heard his name announced in the pass in the Rose Bowl, and I'm sitting there kind of, Didier. I'm sitting there scratching my head, Didier.
I kind of get that.
So, in a weird sort of way, I mean, it wasn't like that Bill Arnsparger tried to freeze us, like calling a timeout. Oh, these guys will crap their pants now. They're going to have to think about it for another 30 seconds. I don't know.
Oh, man.
But anyway, it was what it was.
What a great story.
It was. There's a lot of them. Little tidbits. And like I said, and here's the other part that I didn't learn this until this hunting thing I did with Clint out in his, this is back 1982. Not 19, what am I talking about? 2012. Ooh, I'm going back. In 2012, we're out, in the Umatilla National Forest out there.
So you, Russ Grimm, and Didier.
Clint, we were elk hunting out there. And so we get to talking about it, and Clint started telling me, and this is something everybody, because they're going to play that, you'll see it sometime this week on ESPN or Fox Sports or whatever. You're going to see the run. And you're going to see it from the very beginning. And you're going to watch Clinton. I'm going to give you a little heads up on this. You're going to watch Clinton Didier go in motion. What motion was, I have no idea. I never did know any of that crap. It wasn't important to me. I just knew 70 chip meant Theismann's going to give me the ball, and I'm going to the left side to start with. Where we go from there, I don't know. It could go someplace else. You'll notice Clint will come across, but it was fake motion, fake something, I forget, fake jump, zoom, I don't know, it's all this bullshit. I had no interest in, because I was not a part of the passing game. It might have helped maybe from the blocking, but too much to think about, Todd. I got beer to drink. Anyway, Clint does an unbelievable fake, and he told me to himself. He says, "I'm thinking I got to go on, and I really want to sell this thing," which he did because Don McNeil actually slips. You'll see it. He slips and almost falls down.
I remember Didier did like some baby chops,
and then he hits
reversed
it hard and turns around, and McNeil's thinking he's going all the way across. So when he plants, his foot slips a little bit, and all of a sudden he's just a little delayed. And if you look at that from a physics standpoint, the people that do the Isaac Newton type stuff, it took him he was behind me just enough that all he could get was he got a side shot. He might have been able to get to where he would have got more in front and could have got a bigger piece, but all he could get was that little piece of me. And obviously I was going at a pretty good clip by the time I hit him, and all he had was a grip on my jersey, and he just wasn't strong enough to hang on for the cavalry to get there and bail him out. So that's the way that went down. But those are little instinct, what do you call it? Little instances, nuances of the game that happened that that I didn't find out till later on. 30 years later that I didn't even know that this had happened. So I always thought that was pretty cool. You get these little tidbits from players that things that you've been a part of. You never had any idea.
Stories behind the stories and how it all went down.
But and that's something, like I say, that not anybody that sees that play, they just look at the play and they don't really realize that Clint Didier had a lot to do with that play's success. Not to mention Otis Wansley. I tell people that Otis looked like Superman. You remember the old when George Reeves was Superman. Do you remember that?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, any of them, you watch any Superman, they got their hands out like this, and they got the cape, and they're parallel to the ground. That's what Otis looked like, chipping on that outside linebacker.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy didn't even lay a glove on me. It was Don McNeil was the only guy between me and eternity, really, and Don wasn't quite enough.
And literally, the rest is history. So, what was your first memories when the gun sounded? They don't sound a gun.
Yeah,
but the clock wound down.
No, they shoot. They shoot the gun. I think so. They don't do it anymore, but I think back in those days they did.
Yeah,
but maybe not. I can't. I remember Marion Barry, the mayor. He was on the sideline.
Mayor for life.
Yeah, it was right. Well, he saw the cameras, and after this touchdown, and
Riggo.
Yeah, exactly. You and me. Okay, bye. But no, it was all, and this is the part where it became surreal. And even after we scored that touchdown, having been through the Dallas game the year before, or 2 years before that, 3 years, whatever it was, 79. Yeah, it would have been 3-4 years before that. I'm thinking, this ain't literally Yogi Berra. It ain't over till it's over.
Uh-huh.
And so it was. Well, now you're just kind of, you don't even know what state you're in. And so, we had to go in and we did I'm a notoriously slow dresser, so it's taken me a long time. But I had, because I was the MVP, there was a press conference for that, so you had to get up in front of the press and do that. Then your locker, and then even after that, they still come around and ask you more questions. So it was one of those deals where it was just everything was happening so fast. It was sensory overload, basically.
Sure.
I didn't know what the hell to think. This is where, though, I remember that I left the locker room and everybody had gone, and I had another ride there, and I think it was Ron Saul's brother, Rich. And so I come out of the locker room, and I'm the last one out. The equipment man, Jay Brunetti, said, "Hey, Riggins, come on, we won the Super Bowl, time to go." Yeah, exactly. I'd like to kind of get a little fun in before we got to fly home tomorrow. So I finally got all dressed out, and like I said, everybody was gone. And so then I walk out of there, and I'm walking across the Rose Bowl there, and it's, the sun had sunk into the Pacific, so now the lights are on. I don't remember being on when we went in there, but we were in there long enough they turned the lights on. And you see all the stadium workers are in there cleaning the place up, and I'm walking across there, and I looked up at that scoreboard, and they'd left it fully, it was fully lit as how the game ended exactly. And I looked up at that, Todd, and it said Washington 27, Miami 17, and then it was where I had that moment. I went, I'll be damned. We're Super Bowl champions. That's when it hit me. But until it was literally like reading the front page of the newspaper in a weird sort of way when I walked out into that stadium. It was like, what it was? It was like the commercial Joe Green did with the kid years ago. It was one of those.
Here, kid, with throwing on the jersey.
Yeah, it was like when you walked out and you looked up, and it was like you couldn't believe it.
Well, this town went batshit
I need another
crazy.
one of those moments.
Yes, we all do.
I need another one of those moments.
We all do. And this town went batshit crazy, the likes of which we've still never seen. And again, with all the Stanley Cup and the
I mean, the riots this summer were tame.
Yes,
compared to what was going on after that Super Bowl.
But the joy and how we took to the streets, and like you said, the how the community all came together, didn't matter race, creed, color, religion, none of it.
No.
It was the great unifier.
It really was.
And we need more of that. Now the capper, Riggo, I doubt you remember this, but the capper was, so you know how the Super Bowl and the networks, they advertise like one of their biggest series because they know they've got the largest audience in the world. So NBC was making the debut of the A-Team with Mr. T. And Mr. T was in attendance at the Super Bowl because they were debuting the A-Team right after this. So Riggo and Mr. T. That's when the A-Team made their debut. Another star is born.
I pity the fool. I pity the fool. I pity the fool. Yeah, it was. Was George Papard there?
I don't know.
And Faith, what was his name? I can't remember Faith. He ended up getting some spinoff or something.
Right.
I can't remember.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to, next week on the podcast here, we're going to drill down on the upcoming Super Bowl, Tampa Bay, Kansas City. On paper,
what's the spread as of today?
Still at 3. Still at Kansas City. Still Kansas
stay
City.
At that.
Probably barring some injury or something weird coming up here in the next week. But we'll get into that and really what a Super Bowl means in towns and communities and how it can be the great
unifier.
100%.
It is. Well, I think we ought to wait till next week, Todd. Riggo out.